simply saying, make America great again. We've got to get deeper than just these superficial fixes, as important as they are.
The issue is who has the guts to take on.
John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies. It has to do with drug policies.
What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? Go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williamson.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back. I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump. I have an idea about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and, sir, love will win.
Thank you.
Oh, what a character. And she has a video literally of her and her someone who she knows, I don't know, dancing in some like hotel or somewhere. It's great. All right. That's our little taste of Marianne Williamson. Now we do want to get in the fallout of some of these debates. So a day after this bruising debate, in which Senator Kamala Harris laced into his history on civil rights, former VP Joe Biden was out and defending his record, saying that 30 seconds to 60 seconds on a campaign debate exchange can't do justice to a lifetime committed to civil rights. At a labor luncheon in Chicago on Friday, Biden recited a litany of his actions he'd taken in his long career to promote civil rights, and insisted that I never, ever, ever opposed voluntary busing. So, voluntary busing. Again, it sounds like still, what he is saying to me is that if you don't want to bus, it is okay to not bus. Or it's okay to, back at that time, just let people get away with not busing or black kids to school. Like, that is something that he is saying here. I mean, if you don't want to bus, you don't have to bus. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, again, it's the same thing. Folks, the discussion in this race shouldn't be about the past, he said. Biden was addressing the latest of several controversies in his 2-month-old campaign setbacks that he has managed to survive while continuing to the top of the polls early in the 2020 race. But his first, he has continued to drop, though. That's the important thing to remember. And we're going to see how all the candidates really fare after this play or debate. Many Democrats say that his first debate performance this cycle was rocky, if not awful. And prominent current and former party officials warned Friday that his appearance on Miami revealed cracks in his message. That would be the strongest challenger he would be the strongest challenger to the president, because if he just comes out and talks like an idiot, like, that's going to be a bit of a challenge with the fact that he could possibly beat the president. Because these are both two mentally damaged people. I mean, I think we're very much seeing that Joe Biden he's not really Uncle Joe. He's Grandpa Joe, as in the crazy dude from Willy Wonka, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book or movie or whatever. Like, that's what he's turning into right now. If the contention is he's the one to go head-to-head, he's going to have to reprove that, Sue Dvorsky, the former chairwoman of the Iowa Democratic Party, said, because last night put some cracks, I think, in that narrative. And I think anyone who looked at it could see that the cracks were going to come. But anyway, I don't want to judge her take on that there. Former Governor Jim Hodges of South Carolina said, where the Biden people need to be deeply concerned is the aura has worn off. Last night helped show that this is a real competitive race. And, yeah, I don't think anyone ever thought that Biden was going to run away with it. But, yeah, I'm glad we're starting to see. I'm glad that people, especially after this race, and especially after that cringe-worthy exchange with Kamala Harris last night, because I was watching that with my mother, actually. She was like, we have to leave the room. She's like, I don't want to watch this. Because that's how you know it's bad. But yeah, so it was rough. It was definitely rough. On Thursday night, on the Thursday night debate, Harris obviously, as we played, confronted Biden over his fond remembrance last week of what he cast as more civil time in the Senate when people of opposing viewpoints could find common ground. Biden specifically referenced segregationist Southern senators to make his point, words that Harris, who was black, said she found hurtful. She also tore into his record of actively opposing busing measures in the 1970s, which he did do. Biden found himself again explaining his decades-old record, reminding voters that he served with America's first black president. Oh, we were well reminded of that. Almost as well reminded as we are that Meghan McCain is the daughter of John McCain. We were very well reminded of both of those things. He repeated that defense Friday. And the fact is that you can't just look past some of this stuff. It's very, 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 very bad. That it's just not okay. Like, this decades-old record is not something you could just hide behind while you have done these less than standard actions here. It's just that simple. Some Democrats know that Friday he appeared to be on the defensive during the debate, even cutting himself off abruptly when his speaking time ran out before the moderators have not yet been intervened. There's a lot of room for improvement, said State Senator Marlon Kimpson of South Carolina, and he has a lot to learn from this experience, particularly when he has a strong record on civil rights, which he does not. Like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kimpson, Senator Kimpson. I don't see that record on civil rights. What I do see is Bernie Sanders, who actively participated in protests of civil rights before it was popular, before people in politics were coming out and saying that. Like, all this stuff. Again, I've said this before, if you want to compare Joe Biden and compare Bernie Sanders on the issues, all of the ones he supported, whether it be gay rights, whether it be civil rights, whether it be Medicare for all, whether it be climate justice, whether it be or paying attention to climate change. If you look down the road, where are the issues that he supported back then when he was mayor of Burlington, when he was the House of Representative, the congressman from Vermont, and what was Biden supporting, and how does that end up now? I think you'll find that Bernie Sanders' positions are viewed a little bit more favorably and turned out a little bit better than the crime bill and the Iraq war, which are now in the trash heap of some of the worst decisions in history. That is very, very, very prevalent in my opinion. So, yeah, and again, things got awkward for both of Kamala and Biden, but Kamala in a little bit of a different way. When Chris Matthews interviewed Senator Kamala Harris following her winning performance on the Democratic debate stage, he managed to bungle an otherwise normal conversation with an absurd question about race. This is a little whack. We'll play this for you.
Really important to people of all backgrounds and ethnicities. I don't like the word race, ethnicities.
Right.
What a weirdo! Oh my God!
And not have hatred towards white people generally.
No,
well, I'm just asking because you talked about it being a kid and having other kids being kept off as friends because their parents looked at you as someone else.
Well, but most Americans do not conduct themselves that way, and most parents don't conduct themselves that way. So there was no need to create a broad application because of that one experience. But we cannot deny that there are many children, black children in America, who have had that experience. Children of color who have had that experience, be they Latino, Asian, or black. That has happened. That happens in America.
Watching former Vice President Knight, do you feel that he had an adequate answer to you emotionally, intellectually, historically to what you were raising tonight?
I think that he, I would like to hear him acknowledge what was wrong about a perspective on busing. That was a perspective that I believe he had at that time. Yeah. Listen, we were all, busing was part of what was necessary to integrate the schools of America. And to then fall back on, well, what's the state's responsibility versus the federal government, that leaves the need to really address the fact that it was just wrong.
Right. Yeah, so that's her going a little bit deeper there. But if Matthews is seriously curious about how black people manage to stay remotely sane in a deeply racist country, I mean, he should pick kind of a weird time to ask. But Matthews' tendency towards boorish tactlessness is basically his entire brand, which leaves a big question hanging in the air. Why and how do MSNBC executives not just turn on Harbaugh every night and be like, oh, God, what is he going to say now? Like, because he's such a weird, just an incredibly weird guy. It's like, hey, Kamala, you're black. How do you not hate white people? How do you not hate? Okay, sorry, I cannot do a good Chris Matthews impression. It's like, hey, how do you hate white people? Folks were at Harbaugh tonight. How do you hate white? How do you not hate white people? They're just being mean to you your entire life. We're trying different directions here. I apologize, but yeah, even Kamala didn't really quite escape unscathed. I mean, she had a dominant performance at Thursday's Democratic debate, sure, but she's now clarifying her commitment last night regarding the abolishment of private health insurance. The question asked in both debates was a simple one from NBC moderator Lester Holt, and at least judging for the network's stream, there didn't appear to be technical malfunctions that would have prevented any of the candidates from hearing it. Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? Senators Bernie Sanders and Harris were the only two on stage to raise their hands. Marianne Williamson briefly scratched her nose, and Joe Biden tepidly lifted his hand but seemed to be asking the moderators for the floor. Shortly after, Sanders, who gave a decent but not so great performance on the night, got into it with Michael Bennet over his Medicare for All plan. Here is how that played out.
Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying. It was Harris raising her hand in favor of abolishing health insurance, private health insurance, that came as a surprise to most. Harris has staked out this position before. First, after tepidly supporting the concept of single-payer system, she came out for Medicare for All in August 2017, co-sponsoring Senator Bernie Sanders' bill. Then, at a CNN town hall by Jake Tapper, hosted by Jake Tapper this past January, Harris was asked the same stupid question by Tapper, that every interviewer or moderator who has thrown at Medicare for All plan. What about people who like insurance, guys? Here is what he said about that.
Just to follow up on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, to reiterate, you support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
All right, let's go to the next.
Yeah, let's move on is right. From Kamala Harris changing and flip-flopping her positions all over the place. And that is since Harris responded again that let's move on. It's pretty clear, though. But Harris walked it back the next day, which is why it was surprising that she raised her hand on Thursday, only to walk that back again. So she probably started getting some calls. Now she's saying she's open to multiple paths for Medicare for All. She stated that originally Republicans attacked Harris in minutes of their remarks, saying that she wants to eliminate private insurance even if you like your plan. Tuesday morning, Starbucks boss Howard Schultz was piling on a fellow billionaire potential presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg, at the time, this is from a CNN article at the time, was dismissing the entire plan as a fiscally ruinous pipe dream. So a Harris advisor then signaled that the candidate would also be open to more moderate health reform plans, which would preserve the industry. So, I mean, let's calm things down. And apparently, again, so there's a very interesting thing that happened over the weekend, sometime in the recent weeks, was an Obama official who's turned into a healthcare industry lobbyist and consultant now said that pretty much the only person that they're worried about, look her up, Stephanie Cutter, she says the only person that we're really worried about who actually has a Medicare for All plan, is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie's not going to win. So it shows you who they're really concerned about. So she raised her hand last night and decided to get